It's time to read chapter 15 of the Titanic. When we left off, Juliana had accidentally led Lightoller down into the storage room in the steamer trunk that Patty was hiding in, and they finally got their hands on him and captured him. So we'll see what happens next. Chapter 15, RMS Titanic, Sunday, April 14th, 1912, 8:15 a.m. "What have we here?" rumbled Kevin Gilhooly with a cruel smile. "If you put out enough rubbish, sooner or later, you'll trap a rat." The gangster and his henchman, Seamus, watched from behind the bars of their cells as Lightoller and Master-at-Arms King shoved Patty into a chair. Lightoller ignored the prisoners and skewered the stowaway with burning eyes. "I'll have your name, boy, and the name of the crewman who let you aboard this ship." Patty stuck out his chin. "Patrick Burns, and nobody let me aboard." The second officer reddened. "So the angels brought you down from heaven above." "No angels. It was your own cargo crane that plucked me off the deck in Belfast. Hiding in a bale of linen I was." He pointed at the two gangsters in the brig. "From this murdering scum." "Put the lad in here with me," Gilhooly suggested, "and I'll gladly save you the trouble of what to do with him when we get to New York." "Shut your gob," King ordered. Lightoller was astounded. "Are you telling me that you've been aboard the Titanic for 12 days? Living where? Not in that box. Who's been feeding you?" "Miss Glam, obviously, but she's only been aboard since Southampton. You have an accomplice, someone of the crew. Is it young Huggins?" "Don't know the man." "You mentioned his name to me." His captive stared back defiantly. "If I can hide aboard your precious ship for 12 days, grant me the guile to parrot back a name I've heard." "Don't lie to me." The second officer raised his arm to strike. Patty had already resolved that, no matter what happened, he would not betray Alfie. If he had to take a beating from Lightoller, so be it. He had suffered worse at the hand of his stepfather, and poor Daniel had suffered far, far worse from the two men on the other side of the bars of the brig. "Don't you see that the boy is at the root of both our problems?" Gilhooly reasoned. "Surely we can come to an arrangement. Release me, and I'll have the information you need in 5 minutes." Lightoller looked from Gilhooly to Patty, and then to the master-at-arms. "Lock the thugs up together, and put the boy in the other cell. I don't want him harmed until I've had a chance to interrogate him." "Here's your hot chocolate, Miss Sophie." Alfie handed her a steaming mug. "Would you like me to get you a blanket? They say the temperature is dropping rapidly." Sophie seemed distracted. She barely noticed the chill of the boat deck as she accepted the drink and took a sip. "I'd like to talk to him," she blurted suddenly. "Him?" Alfie repeated, puzzled. "Mr. Masterson. It breaks my heart to see how lonely he is." Alfie bit his lip. "You must be joking. No one wants to talk to Mr. Masterson. I wish I didn't have to. And he's taken a liking to me, more's the pity." "I hope you didn't borrow that attitude from my mother," Sophie said, disapprovingly. "Just because she's Amelia Bronson doesn't mean she's always right." "I'm not saying she's always right," Alfie returned, "but she's right this time." "How could you be so unfeeling?" Sophie accused. "The poor soul has been so isolated by the loss of his legs that he's unable to be sociable. He needs to be accepted by the rest of us, not forced further into the darkness. I want to be introduced to him. At least I can make the remainder of this voyage more pleasant for him." "You'll not go near the man," Alfie said grimly. Sophie frowned. "I didn't ask for your permission. You're my steward, and you're his steward. Who better to make the introduction?" Alfie remained stubborn. "I'll not do it." Sophie faced him with growing annoyance. "Very well, I'll introduce myself. I'm a modern woman. I don't have to worry about the outdated customs of the last century." She handed him back the mug and turned to leave. "No, wait, listen," Alfie pleaded. "I see no reason why I should," Sophie said coldly. Alfie took a deep breath. There was no choice but to tell all. "Remember the scrapbook I showed you and Miss Juliana in the baggage hold? The one about the Whitechapel murders? It belongs to Mr. Masterson." "I can believe that," Sophie replied thoughtfully. "Keeping a scrapbook would be one of the few pastimes available to an invalid. And in light of his misfortune, it's understandable that he might develop an interest in a dark subject, like a series of—" She pulled up short. "Alfie, you're not saying that crippled old man is Jack the Ripper?" "He wasn't old and crippled then," Alfie reasoned. "He was injured in 1889, exactly when the Whitechapel murders ended. That's why Jack the Ripper stopped killing. He wasn't physically capable of it anymore." He grasped Sophie's arm. As your steward, as your friend, I can't let you go to him. Your mother is right. He does hate women. Sophie was flustered, but she had Amelia Bronson's rock-solid faith in her own convictions. There must be another explanation. It's only a scrapbook. With teeth, Alfie challenged. We can't know for certain. The exchange was interrupted when Juliana barreled up to them, agitated in the extreme. Patty's under arrest, and it's all my fault, she blurted, her pink cheeks streaked with tears. What? Chorused Alfie and Sophie. Juliana began to cry as she told them how she had inadvertently led Lightoller to Patty's hiding place in the baggage hold. I tried to stop him, she panted, out of breath from running up to the boat deck. But Mr. Lightoller said that hiding Patty is almost as serious as stowing away yourself, and I might be arrested too. He's bluffing, Sophie scoffed. The White Star Line would never do that to a first-class passenger, certainly not the daughter of an earl. Alfie went pale, remembering the conversation with his father early that morning. But they won't hesitate to do it to a junior steward. At the least, I'll be fired, and my poor father, too, for helping me. He didn't help you, Juliana exclaimed, aghast. Begging your pardon, miss, but the respect and consideration you're used to, that's not how the world works for people like Dot and me. The White Star Line has the power of the Lord on high over us, and we can be sacked at any time for any reason, or for no reason at all, if that's the captain's pleasure. I'm not so much worried for myself as for my father. He's been with the White Star Line nigh 20 years. A man his age with no other job experience, he'd starve, and probably me with him. Both girls regarded him with pity. The life he described was completely foreign to them, yet they could see in the haunted eyes that he was telling them the truth. What can be done? Sophie asked anxiously. I can't be connected to Patty, Alfie reasoned, which means I can't risk being seen with you two. As your steward, of course, but as friends, that's just not possible anymore. He regarded Juliana ruefully. I suppose you were right all along, Miss Julie. It's not a good idea for the classes to mix socially. She shook her head sadly. I was ever so wrong. Alfie looked around the boat deck, his expression wary. I should go. Don't do anything rash to try to save Patty. He's at the mercy of the White Star Line now. It's possible that I am too, and my poor father. He hurried away, leaving the two girls standing at the rail, forlorn. I could never have imagined how much I shall miss his company, Juliana said tragically. He's not dead, Sophie pointed out. He just has to be careful around us, that's all. What on earth possessed you to decide that you had to go to the hold and find Patty this morning? Juliana felt the tears returning and steeled herself with a deep breath. That's the worst part of this. I learned the real reason for this voyage to America. Sophie was confused. It isn't your father's business? It is, but the nature of that business is to barter me to the son of an oil tycoon. In halting speech, she told of her father's plan to marry her to one of Mr. Hardcastle's sons in order to rescue the Glam family's finances. He says it's my duty as his daughter, she finished miserably. Sophie was horrified. 100 years ago, perhaps. Not in the 20th century. But what can I do about it? Women are never as powerless as men want us to think we are, Sophie lectured. And that comes straight from my mother, the world's greatest big mouth on the subject of women's rights. Julie, they can put you on a ship to America. They can even dress you in white lace and a veil and drag you to the altar. But they can't make you say yes. Of course they can, Juliana sniffed. Sophie shook her head. They can bribe you, browbeat you, shout until they're blue in the face. But in the end, the final measure of control is yours and yours alone. Let's talk to Mother. She can help. Then let her help Patty, Juliana said adamantly. He's the one who really needs it right now. It doesn't matter what happens to me. And that's the end. We'll see if Juliana can get some help from Mrs. Bronson, Sophie's mom.